Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of We Say Things, sponsored by nobody. My name is SUNSfan, joined by syndereN the Great. How are you?
The Great.
The Great.
I'm good. I'm good.
That's it?
I was
You're
just
good?
yeah, well, I am good, but I was gonna say, yeah. So we said last episode that we were gonna have a sponsorship to announce, which is just a little bit delayed, I suppose, is what we should say here. So, but it's not canceled.
As far as I know.
Don't you guys worry? They didn't cancel because of the last episode. Which
That's true. I guess I was going to say, who cares? But you're right. People have a reason to actually know this now. So just so you guys know, as always, this podcast is available via audio on the Apple spectrum. I don't know what you even want to call it. Apple universe, Google, Spotify, and the rest of it. You can find it also at sunsfan.gg/podcast. And I apparently had to add it to Google Play. So this is a mini rant. It's not the official rant. Google Play Music apparently is different than Google Podcast. Were you aware of this, syndereN?
I use neither, and I never have, so I have no idea.
Does that seem weird to you that the same company has two places that you need to submit podcasts? Completely different, apparently.
But why do you need to submit them to both?
Because people that use Google Play Music couldn't find it last week.
But you can have podcasts on both.
Yes. So
Okay.
I have added that, and it should be available to search. I don't even know what they're thinking, but it is what it is.
Okay.
Anywho,
that sounds a bit backwards, but yeah.
And I do believe that Apple is the only one that you can rate with comments. I could be wrong, but of course, let us know if that's not the case. We do have a new rating, only one this week. I'm kind of disappointed, you guys. I was expecting a lot more after we've been giving shout-outs. Maybe just hated the circumcision talk. I don't know. syndereN, do you want to read off the latest?
Made it to the end. Yeah, I'll read it out. Okay, this one is by QLube. Definitely the best Dota male hygiene crossover podcast. 5 stars. Damn, that's great.
Excellent.
Looking forward to tuning in every week for fascinating and relevant discussions of the differences between NA and EU pro scenes, washing habits, and cheese.
Perfect.
Okay, so I just want to clear up something really quickly here. We're not going to be talking about washing habits and cheese every time. So if this is why you're subscribed to the podcast, there is no guarantee that we will cover this topic every time. But we will cover something every time. I guarantee we'll talk about something. So
fair enough.
Just
as always, this podcast is available live via Twitch at SUNSfan. Do that every time. Twitch.tv/SUNSfanTV at 2 a.m. PST, 11 a.m. CEST every single Tuesday, my friend. And of course, upload it to YouTube afterward. All right. So this isn't a rant. We're not going to call this a rant. Occasionally, we will do a rant as you like, as you enjoy.
I know
syndereN.
this will be a rant.
It won't be. It's more a depression update.
Okay. It's a rant.
So it's an update from last week. I know you guys, a lot, actually, more than I thought, responded to the NBA talk. I'm not going to start talking about the NBA a lot because I know there's a lot of European viewers, and plus syndereN, half the show doesn't know
anything about this.
So the update is, it's a very sad one, as you might expect. The Suns got the second worst outcome. As you know, there's a 14% chance to get the number 1 pick, and it was kind of like de-escalating odds to some degree. We got the 6th pick.
Out of how many? 7?
Well, technically, there's 30 picks, but of the lottery, which we're talking about, the worst that we could have gotten was 7, and we got 6.
Okay.
And probably the worst part about it, at least as it was happening live, so I don't know if you know this. Do you know who the Lakers are, syndereN?
I know the name.
Los Angeles Lakers. I hate them more than probably anything in the entire world, and I'm not even... Okay, I can think of one thing I hate more, which I won't mention, but second is definitely the Lakers. Maybe we can have a rant on that some other time. They jumped from number 12 pick to number 4. Okay? Yeah. I was very sad about this until I realized that it's okay because it's really just a 1-pick draft anyway. There's only one really good player. Then there's 2 okay ones. And then the 4th pick and beyond are actually just worthless. So I wasn't too upset about it. Yeah, they're pretty bad. This is like one of the worst drafts other than like number 1 is generational talent. Next 2 could be good. After that, it's like they're all role players, essentially.
Okay, so who got the first pick guy?
First pick went to the New Orleans Pelicans, which are a very small market team. They actually have the worst, or at least bottom 5 attendance in the NBA. So a lot of people are kind of upset about that because everybody wanted him to go to New York. But it is what it is.
And they did pick that guy, right?
The draft doesn't happen for another month, so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but they will. It's
so they can get bribed for the next month.
Sure, people can offer a lot of stuff for that player if they want, but it's unlikely it will ever happen.
Things could happen that would happen in Game of Thrones so that he ends up somewhere else.
Oh, no spoilers. All right, moving on.
I'm not going to say what. That wasn't about the last episode. It was just about
you said the name Game of Thrones. People are going to turn off the episode thinking we're going to spoil it.
All right, sorry for the spoiler, guys. There is a show called Game of Thrones. Okay.
Some people will never discover it on their own because of you.
Say it again.
All right, on to Dota 2, syndereN. So we have the major qualifier. Yes. They are done. Tell me all about it. Go on your rant.
Okay, actually, let me just quickly look up all the results so I can cover
Great, you're not even prepared. Excellent.
Thoroughly. I mean, I've watched the outcomes. I just I don't remember everything by heart. So I guess the regions that most people watching this podcast care the most about are probably Europe and NA, so we'll do those first.
Okay.
Basically, they did a different format this time around for the major qualifiers, which I think is a good format when there's 3 qualifying teams. They did round robin, where the first place team is directly qualified. So they didn't need to play playoffs. And the winner was Team Secret. They got a 6-1 score. The following 2 teams got a 5-2. So Secret went through straight away. They didn't need to play any more games. And then through the bracket, eventually Liquid got the first slot, and the last slot that they had to grind a little bit more for was OG. And the sad loser of this qualifier, in a sense, was Alliance, who were twice 1 game away from qualifying. They lost 2-1 to Liquid, and then they lost 2-1 to OG. And both of those, had they won 1 more game, they would have made the major. So that's obviously really sad. And their grand reward, as we've talked about before, for not qualifying is nothing. So congratulations on that. Okay. Then in NA, most people probably expected EG to clinch first, but they actually didn't get first place. They lost a close game to Forward, who went 7-0. So they got the first slot, and then EG eventually did go through the bracket and win against Complexity in the finals.
The round robin, was that best of what?
Best of ones among 8
all
teams.
Best of ones. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And yeah, I think actually every region did that this time. It wasn't only the regions with 3 slots. All of them, the first place slot went to the round robin winners, which I'm more a fan of in a 3 qualifier system than in a 2 qualifier system, but they did it for all regions. Just to quickly go over the other regions. In SA, Pain Gaming went flawless. They went 7-0. Oh, sorry, 6-1. They actually did lose a game, but they still got first place. And then Infamous got the second slot, which is something we could talk about if you want to, because there's a bit of controversy around that. There's been some tweets as well from some of the South American players that kind of, or at least specifically one guy. And have you heard of Duster? Maybe you remember him.
Oh, yeah.
He basically, he tweeted some shit at Skitter, who plays for Infamous, because they are unhappy that 4 out of 5 players of the Infamous team are actually not SA players. It's a 4 European player team. But it is within Valve's rules because they actually live in the region. At least... So Biver and Oliver, who's Skitter, they moved to...
Is it Biver and not Biver?
It's Biwa, if you would say it in Danish. I say Biver, if I say it in English.
You
can say Biver, too. They've lived in South America for, I think, 2 months now. They've moved there, and they lived there. And the org is located there. And then Black joined, I think, about a month ago or a couple of weeks ago, and he's there, too. So it's like one of those, again, it's one of those gray zone things where I think these guys are way more in the clear than the...
I agree.
I don't know if you should call it scandal with Pain X, where they just flew to the qualifiers, qualified, and then left again. And they did get disqualified at that time, if you remember.
So here's the thing. I'm not going to get too into this because I don't want to... We can have a whole conversation about this another time. The reason I'm okay with this specific instance is because the time investment, right? So the whole idea of having qualifiers in areas that, I mean, let's be real, that region is the worst of all the regions.
It's the weakest.
Historically speaking. It's always been that way. The way that they get better, first of all, obviously the LAN experience that they're essentially guaranteed to go to at this point helps, right? But I don't think that's enough. I think having Westerners come out to play there is actually really beneficial to the scene if they stay, because then that's more competition.
That's the big if.
Everyone gets better, right? That is the big if, though. So
that's the big if. That was basically what happened back with DC, right? Like Misery and the European. At that time, the North American scene was considered shit. Except for EG, right?
Yeah.
And then some Western players traveled to the US and started living there and playing there, and the quality of the region definitely increased. I think that's very hard to argue against that.
Well, a big reason for that is because I give great massages, especially to Weehaw. So
I'm sure you can take full credit for this somehow. Okay,
he played really well.
Let's roll over. Let's go through the last couple of qualifiers. So in CIS, who do you think won? You don't know, right?
Don't tell people that.
All right, let's do a little game.
Navi,
You need to guess.
just kidding.
Who won the qualifiers in CIS?
Virtus Pro.
No.
Really?
They did get second, though.
What?
They didn't win.
Wow.
Yeah.
Too cocky? All right, who got first?
I mean, they got the
Empire?
same score as 2 other teams. No, Empire
Vega?
didn't make it.
I don't even know the teams anymore in CIS.
Gambit.
Oh, Gambit. Okay.
Finally, this is probably the biggest story of the qualifiers, honestly. FNG finally broke his curse. He has been to multiple major grand finals, and they have always choked. And this time he finally qualified.
You mean qualifier finals?
Super relieved. Yes.
Okay.
Maybe, in a way, maybe he didn't break his curse because he technically didn't play a qualifier finals because they got the first place slot, right? So they got out of the round robin. And the way that it worked was there was a 3-way tie for first between Gambit, Navi, and VP, and Gambit beat them both in a best of 1. So they got first place. And then VP beat Navi in the finals of the playoffs later.
Has he cut his hair yet?
Oh, yeah, he did a long time ago, right?
Really? Boy,
Yeah.
that shows how
I don't know how long it
I
is now. I mean, he's cut it and let it grow again a bit, I think.
Oh, that's
Another
nice to
fun
hear.
fact about this qualifier, in total, Navi versus VP, Navi won 6 games and VP won 4, and VP qualified.
Okay.
So that's how it goes sometimes. Okay, let's finish the rest. China, first place went to PSG LGD. No big surprises there. They are the strongest team in the region, arguably together with Vici Gaming, who did end up clinching third in the end. But the second place went to Royal Never Give Up, which I think was probably surprising to a lot of people that RNG could actually take second place. So they will also be there. And then finally, in SEA, first place did not go to Fnatic like most people would have probably expected, but it was TNC that got 6-1 in the groups. And then Fnatic did, in the end, barely qualify with a 3-2 over power of MYSG plus AU.
The hell kind of name is that?
It's basically Malaysia, Singapore plus Australia, right? That's what the name stands for.
Okay.
And one of the players of that team you actually know in person. It was Winter. He almost qualified for a major.
Oh, I think
He
I saw some
3-2
tweets
in the
about
finals,
that.
which honestly, it would have been super cool to see him go. I was hoping for Winter to make it. It would be such a great story, but hopefully for him he gets through the minor. They actually played really well. And because of the format, on the final day of the SEA qualifiers, they played 11 games in a row. They played 2 best of 3s that they won 2-1, and then the finals were 3-2. So, shitload of games. Okay, that was a little bit of a rundown of that, but that's that. Now we've covered the qualifiers, and then let's move on with the
let's talk about
bullet point.
I guess this is kind of semi-drama. I want to say it's a good talking point for sure. So between how many days were between the last major ending and the qualifiers beginning? Do you know the actual number?
I can actually look this up.
It's a short amount. But if you need a bit of time, I can read this tweet off first.
No, I've got it in just a second. I'm just looking up the schedule here.
Please do.
Let me see.
You're doing a great job.
So thank you, sir. It was the major ended, I think, on the 12th, and the qualifiers started on the 15th.
Okay, so 3 days.
Something like that.
People, of course, it's a very short amount of time, and this is what Cyborg Matt tweeted, and I will quote it here. The community cheered when... Actually, let me do this in a British accent. The community cheered when Valve announced no direct invites in the DPC because teams would have to prove they deserve it. But honestly, when you spend weeks boot camping, playing an entire major, then having to go home and play qualifiers 1 day later is fucking exhausting.
You know what you just reminded me of?
What?
Have you ever heard the podcast My Dad Wrote a Porno?
No.
You've heard of it, though, right?
No, I've never heard of it.
Have you never heard of that podcast? It's like the world's most famous podcast.
You're not supposed to advertise other podcasts during this podcast.
Dude, ours is the best, but theirs is the most famous, okay? I mean, that's how it often is.
All right, can I finish this tweet? Do I need to start over again?
No, I mean, just keep the accent, okay? I'll try not to crack up while you read.
If anything, you actually run the risk of potentially losing a big team like Secret, Liquid, OG, NIP, EG, LGD, etc. from the major because these teams have been grinding their arses off. And good luck. Have fun if any of your players get sick from the post-event flu. As we come towards the end of Season 2, it's becoming more and more apparent that funneling all the top-tier teams through qualifiers has not really provided any additional benefits to this season, and if anything has just resulted in more damage to the overall Tier 2/Tier 3 scene. Your thoughts, sir? Is it really that funny of an accent? It's just British.
No, I'm just imagining people listening to this podcast and they actually can't pay attention to what you're saying. Like I didn't even hear the quote. You know.
What are you?
Just hearing
All right,
the
go
voice.
look at go follow Cyborg Matt on Twitter, and you can look at it yourself. All right.
Yeah, I mean, we're absolutely
Bloody
not reading
wankers.
them out again.
Quiet your bollocks and get on with it. For God's
so
sake.
basically, the short version, TLDR, qualifiers are stressful for the top teams that have just played in the major, especially if you make it far, right? If you make it far in the major, you have less rest.
Oh yeah.
And Secret obviously did make it the whole way, so they barely had any rest before they had to play qualifiers again. Fortunately, they still pulled through, but I guess there's two sides to this that are important. Number one, it's exhausting for players that have literally just played qualifier or literally just played a major that they barely get rest and have to play qualifiers again. So it's like very stressful. You're constantly in there and you don't really get rest. And then the second part of the tweet is the current format actually helping the tier 2/tier 3 scene? Wow, that's a tongue twister. Or is this just basically creating content where it's still the favorites winning and it doesn't really help the teams?
I feel if you get top
qualifiers?
4 at a major, just go to the next one. Like it's so close together. I don't understand what the purpose of that is.
Exactly. I think in the past, right? In the past in Dota, what was a problem with direct invites sometimes was that teams would perform well at a LAN and then they would get a direct invite to the next one, which was 3 months or 4 months later, okay? And the team would be totally different. They might have shuffled players, they might have become bad or lost motivation, whatever. And therefore, there was this big discrepancy between, okay, what team did we invite and what team did we get in the end? But now that the majors are like a bit more close together and there's a lot more stability this season with teams that, like, there's a lot more stability in general among the top teams. There's been very little shuffling. So you kind of get what you're expecting. I don't think there's as much of a downside as there used to be to inviting teams that place high. Because the teams that place top 3 to top 4 or whatever are staying together and they're performing.
Yeah.
I think the discussion should be how many slots. I would be very much in agreement that there should be direct invites based on the previous major. I honestly think we always should have had it. I think this every team needs to qualify every time is not good. It's not a system I'm a fan of. But the thing that is a bit tough to figure out is, okay, where do you draw the line? Like, how many of the teams should get directly invited? And how should it influence the individual region? So let's say top 4 get directly invited. Okay, let's make a thought experiment here. Let's say the top 4 teams are all EU. Okay. How many teams should qualify from the EU then afterwards?
I think it's a case by case basis. I think you change that every major.
Okay.
And it perhaps somewhat based on who's actually getting directly invited to begin with, right? Because you don't want too many slots for a region when one's already. I think it's a case by case basis. So here's the thing that I have Valve is. It feels like they're always on the extreme for one end of the spectrum. Go back a couple years, captain's draft. There's almost no rules to who you can invite. I could have invited almost any team, I believe.
Yeah.
Within reason. Like if we invited some really shitty ass team, Valve could step in and say, okay, you need to get a better invite than this. But for the most part, if a team's like 50-50 like this, you would always choose the team that's more popular because that's what you're going for. You need the viewership. You need to make money in the tournament. Now, that's basically like a hands-off approach with just a little bit of like a veto power, right? Now it's the other way. Everybody has to qualify for you win this tournament, you still have to play 4 days. Come on. There's got to be a middle ground we can find, you know?
And then you could look at it from the opposite side of it, right? Let's say you look at it from the perspective that, the favorites could fail. Let's say you're exhausted. You just played a major. You got top 3. You played a lot of games. And now you need to go home and qualify again. This was really close to happening for Liquid, by the way. They got second at the major and they almost failed to qualify. Like, they were close, really close twice. They barely made it out of groups. They went 3 and 4, and then they won a tiebreaker to get out of groups. Liquid could have made bottom 3. And then in the playoffs, they won their series 2-1 in close series, both of them. And had they lost, maybe they wouldn't have qualified. So that's an example of a team that literally got second at the previous major and could have bombed out. Is it good for the major, the next one, if they don't qualify is the question. Like, they're obviously a really big team. They got a great placement. I think they deserve to be invited to the next tournament. And one or two things will happen. Either they will win the qualifiers again and get there anyway, or they will fail to qualify. And then in a way, it's bad, right? For the following tournament, because there's going to be less viewership because one of the favorites didn't make it. And then you get this surprise story, which is great. Like, I'm a big fan of underdogs. Okay, I love when teams qualify that aren't that well known or get an opportunity or whatever. That's great. But I feel like you could have the best of both worlds. I think it's possible you could get both. Like invite the favorites, the ones that placed high in the previous major, and then you can get those surprise stories. What if, for example, you invite the previous top 4 of the major, like you just suggested, and then every region gets 2 slots beyond that? Then, because then it's about the relative balance of the region, right? Then if Europe is really strong in one major, there will be an additional European team that will come in for the next one because the region is strong, so they get more representation. Or if Europe bombs out of a major and don't do very well, the teams will actually need to fight to qualify, and one of the European teams won't make it then because they didn't perform in the previous major. That's one option, one way of doing it. Of course, the downside to this is, again, if Europe has, let's say, 3 out of the top 8 teams in the world, or maybe even 4, arguably, if they have one bad major, how much viewership will there be for the following one? Because then 2 of those 4 teams won't qualify in that case, right?
Right.
So there's pros and cons to everything, but I think it's something to think about. And I think we can both agree that the current system is not ideal. It can definitely be optimized.
I mean, even if you do a hybrid of what we're talking about, where you start out with the top 4 teams going to the major and 2 for each region, but then keep it open with the ability to, like, the veto power. If something is obviously out of whack for that specific instance, then you can change up the qualifier spots for that. Like, I feel like you can change this every couple months if you need to. Like, it doesn't need to be
what you're
set in
saying
stone.
is top 4 get invited, and then the remaining 12 slots can be assigned by Valve based on relative power in the region at the time.
Right, but by default,
for example,
it's 2 each.
Do you think SA should have 2 slots, for example?
No.
Is something that could be discussed. I think a lot of people don't.
I don't think so.
But it's really good for SA Dota and for the scene to get 2 teams there because they make prize money. They promote the scene. They get sponsors interested. So,
now I think about it, yes, they should. They should.
There's quite a lot of value. So maybe
over the long run, it needs to.
In CS:GO, the system is very different. But what we could start thinking about is the Dota professional scene reaching a point where maybe majors should have more than 16 teams? Because that is another option. It's a bit more expensive, and it's but then it's about who pays the burden. I mean, if you expand it from 16 to say 18 teams, it's not a major new expense. It's 2 more teams that you fly in. All the organizing, all the infrastructure, setting up a venue costs the same. You're paying for 2 extra sets of flights, 2 extra sets of hotels, and food for those players. It is an expense, but it's not a big one in comparison to everything else. Like, ballpark increasing from 16 to 18 teams probably creates an extra expense of the whole tournament of 5%. Maybe not even, right?
I'm a little more iffy on that one. I mean, I understand why people don't like South America having 2 slots because they're the weakest region. But I personally, and I said this a year ago or whenever they did it, over time, even if it takes like a couple years, over time, that region will get stronger as a result of this.
Oh, it will.
That's why it's a good idea. If you started out with only 1, then it's going to have less of an effect on that region. So you're taking a hit temporarily, as it were. But
I mean,
it makes sense.
Fair enough. Okay. So, but you don't think increasing the number of teams is good? Because they did it for TI, remember? TI went from 16 to 18 teams 2 years ago. And then they cut the wild cards out because wild cards were, let's be honest, pretty stupid, right? It's bad that you travel all the way to the US to play 2 best of 3s, and if you lose, you don't get to play TI. Right. And then you're just there. That's...
Yeah, TI is a special one, though.
Yeah. Sure, of course, but...
You could do 18. I'm just thinking from a tournament organizer. You're making it seem like, I know you mentioned that does cost extra. It's a pain in the ass to do 2 extra teams for organizers. If this was like Valve sanctioned, like Valve's paying for most of it, then it's obviously not a big deal. Like from
that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
So Valve is paying for them.
What if the added 2 teams are not the tournament's expense, for example?
Well, then that doesn't matter.
For the good. It's for the good of the scene and for the growth of the scene, and then Valve pays a bit extra for that, like as a possible solution, right?
Right.
Or
sure. In an ideal world, sure.
Or if the organizers have to pay for it, then it's about like how much it costs. One thing is like the extra pain to go through, or whatever you want to say. But if you're already organizing 16 teams, the extra 2, I disagree. I don't think that is a major pain to bring in 2 extra. It's developing the framework and organizing everything within that framework. That is the...
I wouldn't say it's a major pain. It's a pain, though. It is a pain.
It's extra work.
It's not just 10 players. It's all the people that come with it. It's like 20 people. That's not nothing. But anyway, I agree. Like in an ideal world, that would make sense. But we don't live in an ideal world. Trump is president right now, syndereN.
Okay, let's talk
anyway,
politics
go on to the next point. No, that's the one thing I will not like relive.
I think
we could get into at some point I would like to get into like a religion/spiritual conversation with you, just to get like because I feel like we could have a pretty good talk actually and not be offending.
Spiritual conversation.
Yeah, but politics, it's not happening because I will get
my
too
Ouija
angry.
board and we can get right to it.
Yes, that's a good idea. All right, next on the list, Dota Underlords has been trademarked by Valve. We're going to talk about what that potentially means, but there's some... Now, because it's called Dota Underlords, I looked up the lore of Underlord, and if you don't mind, I'd like to read this, syndereN.
Sure.
What
you have to do it in the British voice, okay?
No, not British. We're going to do something else. How about
Australian?
Old Man Gillywinkle? I can't do Australian.
Sure, that's also... I'll take it. That's good.
Okay, but people might complain they can't understand me, so do your best. Neither myth nor song exist to tell of their coming. Deep below the surface of the world lay unknown wonders and horrors. This hurts my voice. Down and down again, well beneath the slithering magma fields and simmering roots of dormant volcanoes, stand the obsidian city of Aziog. This is hard. Its incomparable stonework spanning an endless cavern. Within honeycomb walls, mortared with the bones of countless slaves, lies the domain of the abyssal horde, and their brutal underlord, Vrogros, a.k.a. Underlord.
That sounds like the person that came up with that name was imagining it being read in that voice. Vrogros.
Vrogros. Armed by the monstrous forge masters of his kind and well practiced in the arts of the Dark Rift, Vrogros is able to conjure forth flame and crippling malice through the twist between worlds. He seeks always to expand his holdings, destroying or enslaving all he encounters. Yet the lands offered by the subterranean realm are few, and so his sights have turned upward. By his command, the first waves of the abyssal invaders have already marched through the rift. A few doomed legions meant merely to test the might of the nations above. Now, as his full force readies itself for unending conquest, Vrogros himself steps into a sunlit world to announce his coming reign. Those who face the Underlord...
That is not in the script. Okay.
How do you know?
How the fuck do you
Those
spell
who
that?
face the Underlord will bow and pay tribute or be crushed where they stand. So that is the lore of Underlord. Does that give us any hints what this might be?
I'm sure everybody knows it now. You can look it up yourselves, guys. I'm sure you.
So what do you think? Not only the lore, but Dota Underlords. What does that mean?
All right, so correct me if I'm wrong, but the TLDR of this lore is basically Underlord is below the ground, and then he doesn't like it very much. There's more space above, so he wants to go above and take above and conquer that. So he dark rifts his armies through, right?
Yep.
Basically.
He commands armies, though. So Dota Underlords, right?
Yes.
So give me your thoughts first, and then I'll expound upon them.
So first of all, this name is, how to say... It's different because there's plenty of games that have like overlords, right? And it's kind of a play on that, right? Like there's games with like overlords where it's like, oh, you are the lord of an army and you are the overlord commanding that army or whatever, but this just ties in with the Dota lore. So it sounds like the type of game that this would entail is one where you are controlling an army as the underlord of that army, which could very easily, when you think about, for example, how auto chess works, which is obviously one of the clear things that this could be that Valve is aiming for with this trademark. If it is an auto chess version, then you would be the commander that then summons in the army with the Dark Rift instead of being the chess piece or the whatever courier you have that summons chess pieces. It is instead an underlord summoning people in through the Dark Portal. That is the very obvious interpretation of this. But let's entertain the idea that it's not auto chess, okay? Which I think is personally for me the most likely. That's the one I think this is. But if it's not, this could be something in VR, right? That's the other obvious option. And
or
in either case,
it could be Dota chess in VR.
That is also possible. Absolutely, it could be both. That is very true. But considering we've talked about this in a previous episode, Dota chess, auto chess is huge. The fact that Valve did not get directly involved and start funding or start profiting off that game makes it seems unreal that that big of an opportunity and that's huge part of the player base is not something that Valve takes to heart and does something with. So that is definitely my guess on this. And Drodo Studios obviously went and made a mobile game instead on the Chinese market, I believe, primarily, with their IP. So I'm guessing that's what Valve want to do. In VR, very possible. I think that could be a cool thing for them to launch. And then the question is, when do we think this is coming out? I think this game will get announced at TI9. And if it is either a VR game or a game that is mobile compatible, which is also an option that Valve have, they have done mobile stuff a little bit. They've done DPC apps and stuff, so they're not like totally foreign to developing for iOS and Android platforms. That would hit in China, and that is where TI9 is. So that would be a really good timing to announce a mobile game because it's, I think... I'm kind of pulling this out of my ass, but I think the country where mobile gaming is absolute biggest for the population, I think, is China. I could be wrong on that.
Probably
but,
true.
I'm pretty sure it's the biggest in China per capita.
Do you think that's too late?
Well, that's the question. I don't know.
How long will auto chess last on its own? How long will it be popular?
Yeah, that's a very good question.
We've talked. So first of all, I completely agree with your assessments. I was going to say literally the exact same thing, whether it be VR or auto chess, probably auto chess.
So we're probably both wrong.
And we've talked about this in past episodes about Valve doing auto chess, right? And you mentioned the fact that it's weird that they never got together with Drodo Studios, but obviously Drodo Studios sold out to the Chinese mobile company anyway. So is Valve doing their own thing? But that's not the only red flag that comes up to me of why that would be occurring. The biggest red flag for me is that they haven't fixed these bugs in auto chess, like in custom games, to help the experience of playing. So I'm thinking if they're making their own thing, why would they bother fixing that? That's almost like a what's the best way to put this? It's like a handicap for your competitor in that case. You know what I mean?
It makes sense, and I mean I could see that in a way that makes sense. But the other way of looking at it is, well, if this spawns off of people's enjoyment in playing auto chess, if the game gets fucking bugged in Dota and people lose interest, will they want to play when the quote-unquote real game comes out, right?
Right. Depends on when that is. I mean, like I agree with you that TI does make the most sense, but that's months away at this point. I don't know.
3 months.
Like, it all depends on how long it takes them to code and make this game in general. Right? I have no idea.
So they filed for the trademark officially, or at least the post that I saw was from May 9th. I don't know how long stuff like this takes in the US, but I think something that is worth, like, regardless of how long this takes, I think something that's worth looking at is how few times Valve does this. I don't think they file for trademarks very often, so this should be probably something that Valve think is a big project that is worth investing a lot of time and effort in, because I don't know what the last title they tried to trademark was, but I feel like this doesn't happen very often from Valve. So
no, that's true. And I forgot to mention the underdog choice is Artifact expansion, or the rebranding of Artifact as Dota Underlords, but highly unlikely, as much as I would love to personally see that.
Yeah. I think the reason that doesn't really necessarily come to mind or seem realistic is, again, the time, right? If we think that this will be announced well, I mean, maybe if this doesn't get announced at TI, which is just my speculation, if it doesn't get announced, my speculation is that it does, but let's say it doesn't, then it could be something Artifact related, because I just don't think with the overhaul that it sounds like they want to make to Artifact, I don't think it would be ready, right? Realistically, the time frame that they've had has been pretty short. Artifact came out, when was it, November last year? It's been out for like half a year.
Yeah.
And they developed it for quite a while. So if they're overhauling it, I don't think they just managed to do that in another half year. So it could be that. It's not out of the question that they're rebranding it. And for me, it would be kind of funny if they did relaunch Artifact under a different name, like I suggested, if you remember on one of our previous podcasts. Like, just don't call it Artifact anymore, because that name has so many negative connotations now, unfortunately, which, again, for me is a shame, because I like the game. But maybe you do have to overhaul it that hard. But we'll see. With the whole lore of Underlords, that could also make sense in an Artifact setting, right? Like, you're the Underlord summoning in cards on the playing field, so that could also be Dark Rift logic.
It ain't happening.
I mean, okay, let's try to be a little creative. Is there anything beyond that we could imagine?
Well, the battle pass,
Dota
the
chess
game
Artifact,
is,
or anything else?
The mini game they're coming out with Artifact, or in Artifact, the mini game they're coming out in the battle pass for Dota 2 is called something else, Morokai something. So it's not anything related with Dota itself, it sounds like. And
it has Dota in the title. It's Dota Underlords, right?
well, I mean, it's not
So-
going to be. It's probably not going to be something inside Dota necessarily, because why would you need to trademark it then?
Could this be?
Is it? I think this is probably a separate game.
Could this be a different kind of game in VR, not a card game?
Yeah, it could be anything. So that's what I'm saying. So
not a chess
if it's
game.
not auto chess, I hope that it's something. I don't personally care that much about mobile. I really am interested in the VR aspect, because we talked about this in the last episode or the one before, with the Index coming out soon. It's been announced that there's 3 flagship games. This could very well be one of them. And I don't know what kind of game it is. Like playing Dota in VR sounds miserable. But you can make like something out of it, the lore,
something Valve could take inspiration from, right? If you're in Valve's shoes here and you want to make a new title and you draw inspiration of something, you look at, I mean, I wouldn't put it past them if they looked at, okay, what other custom games in Warcraft 3 were massively popular? Like, what did people like? And what did never get its own standalone game? Things that people really liked were clearly tower defenses and the line wars, right? So one of the games
Footman
that was
Frenzy.
played, for example, one of the custom games that this like lore or this name could fit from Warcraft 3 would be one of those line wars games where you have you're constantly summoning enemies for the enemies to defeat. You're summoning units for them to defeat while you are defending your own like base or whatever. So kind of like, I'm not sure how to explain this very easily, but basically everybody has a base and you're building defenses and sending offenses simultaneously during the game. This could easily work in VR, actually, as a game where
Isn't
you
that
are
Footman
placing...
Frenzy?
Footman Frenzy didn't have as much of a defensive aspect. That was just a lot of just building constructions and just spawning units, right, all the time. There wasn't so much with like towers, and at least the way I remember.
Okay.
There was a bit.
It was mostly units.
But I don't think it... maybe it's a long time ago. I could be totally wrong on this, but yeah, that type of game could work in VR. Wouldn't you say so? Like if you imagine like controls that you have this, like, let's say you have the battlefield or your base in front of you, and you can like place buildings in VR, and you can summon units by targeting somewhere on the battlefield with your Index. I think that could definitely work.
You know what? I'm hoping for the Index. I hope they have voice activation. So instead of "Hey Google, ask for something," it's "Hey Gaben, move the unit to square 5." How awesome would that be? That would be sick.
Hey Gaben.
So last normal topic that I want to talk about just briefly, we don't have to talk about it very long. Steam Link is now available for iOS. The reason that's significant is because it was previously banned on Apple stores for a long time because they looked at it as like competition. I can't remember the exact reasoning. Have you ever used Steam Link before?
No.
It is awesome. I actually have.
What is
they
it?
They don't sell the. Okay, there's two aspects of this. Number one is the hardware itself. When Artifact was a thing, I have it. Actually, I have it on my table here. This is for the video people out there. It's my Steam controller with the Counter-Strike Go skin. Counter-Strike Global Offensive, that is. I actually like this controller quite a bit for playing Artifact, and to be able to play on my TV, you need Steam Link. Okay. Which is a little hardware box. It was really cheap.
Yeah, now I know what it is. I know what that is. Yeah,
it was super cheap, and I don't even think they make them anymore. My last one was literally $2. They were just giving them away, essentially.
Yeah, I remember that. There was a ridiculous offer. Yeah.
But now it's mostly just software. So you get into your phone, download Steam Link, and you can play stuff through your computer onto your phone. It's actually really cool. And now the fact, I think you don't even need to be in the same household to do that anymore.
Can you play something on your TV through your phone with your Steam controller?
Yes, with just software. I'm not. You'd have to get the app on your TV if it's even a thing, which it should be. I haven't actually tried that.
That's also just software, right?
Yeah. So right now I'm using just the actual box because it's already set up. I haven't actually checked into whether you should be able to, if it's available on mobile, you should be able to do that.
So it's basically called Steam Link because it links two separate devices. That's what it does.
So think of it.
It communicates between different devices. That's what it does.
So for people that don't understand exactly how it works, it's really actually quite cool. So think of, like, let's say you're using your laptop that's really crappy, okay? And let's just say you're downstairs or something in your house, and you want to play Counter-Strike or something, but the computer obviously can't handle it. What it does is essentially streams the game from your good computer that can play it to your laptop. So your laptop, it's almost like you're just watching a video, but you can control it. And if you're in the same house, obviously there's like no lag. So it just feels like you're playing with amazing graphics on your really shitty laptop. It's really cool concept.
It's basically what some streamers do, where they have a streaming PC and the gaming PC. And
Yeah,
the streaming
exactly.
PC runs the broadcast, and then they play on the other one.
Yep.
Okay.
That is exactly
That's really cool, actually. That's nice.
And I think it wasn't until recently that you could do this outside of your own network. Previously, you couldn't do it via the internet. It had to be like in your LAN setting. So now,
but if you do it via the internet, there will be lag, though.
Yes.
Right.
So it depends. Like, would not recommend that for like Counter-Strike, for example. But
what was this? This reminds me of something that was it Google that were launching that thing? What was it called?
Stadia, Google Stadia.
Yeah, that's the
all
same
in the
concept,
cloud.
right?
Yeah,
but it's cloud-based, but the concept is the same.
Yep. The concept is slightly different in the fact that you're not using your own computer in that case. That you're using
they have the power
computers.
For you.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
It sounds interesting.
I mean, I think this can definitely be part of the future of gaming, honestly.
Yeah.
Especially for people I would say this is most appealing in countries where it's harder to afford good hardware. It's very helpful for them to be able to use this kind of system. Perhaps this will be a service that maybe even if you think about countries where it's very popular to go to LAN cafes or whatever, they could technically rent out their computers without people having to go to the LAN center. And you could just pay to play from home with Steam Link, for example.
Now that is cool. Like you'd pay $5 a day or whatever. I don't know what the price would be, but you pay whatever. That would be really cool. I agree. And of course, we'll have a future conversation about Google Stadia. And one little snippet I want to talk about more when it's closer to release, but the fact that companies like Microsoft and Sony have teamed up now, PlayStation and Xbox have teamed up to do some cloud gaming services. I don't know the details on that. It is. And that's probably just in response to Google Stadia. So, by the way, that's the worst name ever. Holy shit. Google Stadia. Yeah.
What would you have called it?
Digital chaos. All right, going on.
Okay. Nice.
Moving on to community questions and topics. This one we've been holding on for quite a while. Would you like to read this? Because it's mostly for you.
Yeah, I could read this one out. Is this one bit? It looks like one question. Okay.
Yep.
I'm a 30-year-old dude. Almost. I mean, this could be me. This is me in like 7 months. I'm a 30-year-old dude who has played Dota, Han, Dota 2 for over 13 years. I always had a dream of competing with the best in the game in tournaments, LANs, etc. Now I'm almost done with university, and a future with job, kids, and all adult life, in quotation marks, very important, awaits. I'm an immortal rank 2500 player, and I wanted to ask you guys if that dream is even possible to achieve with my age in life. Is age just a number, or is the competing life too hard to sustain when you aren't single and living alone with lots of time as a student? Thanks for answering, and thanks for doing these podcasts. I truly love them. Shout out to Trolls from a fellow guy from
Trolls!
Jonas BM. Okay.
Is it Jonas or Jonas?
It's Jonas in Danish.
Okay.
But I said my name in Danish and his in English for some reason. So anyway, 30. So this is not to me as much about the age as it is just how realistic the whole situation is for any age. So if you are basically the pro players nowadays are people that have played for an amount of time, like not necessarily similar to you. You've played for a very long time, but they have played absolutely for years, and they've invested a lot of time into it that they have had because they didn't have necessarily other like major commitments that took a lot of time. So if you are immortal rank 2500 and you want to catch up, let's call it that, to those other players, you are behind by a lot. It will take a lot of time and a lot of effort. And then the question is it realistic for you to be able to allocate all that time and effort over the next, let's say, 3 years, if you also need to pay rent and have a functioning life outside of just literally only playing Dota? Because it's not only about how many years you play, right? It's also about how you play. There are people that play this game for many years and for countless hours, but they're not like trying to go pro. And a big part of going pro is the mindset of like really striving to improve and not just playing for fun. You're playing to get better. And that's a mindset thing. And doing that takes a lot of time. So I think like realistically, the answer is no. But realistically, the answer is no for pretty much everybody. Because you look at how many people try to go pro and how many succeed, it's really few. You have this extra anchor around you that you also are in a time in your life where you need to pay for yourself, and that makes it even harder. So
and it's
My answer is this is possible, but it is so unlikely and so risky, and that the risk reward does not favor you at all. But theoretically, yes, you could do it. I don't think 30 is a death sentence in Dota. We have plenty of players that are playing at a super high level. Solo, I think, is 30 or 31. A player like Universe, like there's plenty of very highly regarded players. Puppy, I think, is also in late 20s or maybe even 30. I'm not sure. I am 29 myself, and I don't feel like I've lost it. I don't think I'm. I don't feel like, oh, I'm getting old. Like I can tell in the game. And if you compare it to other sports, you don't like burn out when you're 30. If you play football, there are plenty of footballers that play until they're late 30s or even 40, and that's a physical sport, whereas ours is more mental in a sense. There is a bit of finger dexterity and stuff, but like
Just
it's
play
not that big of a
support
deal.
if you've lost a step in that
And
regard.
it's the same in CS:GO too. There are really good CS:GO players that have played forever, like Forest is a great example.
But I
of an
would
old
still
player that still
say,
delivers.
having a lot of
So
experience in Counter-Strike, there's more of an age, is a problem with what the cap?
I would say age matters more.
It does, because of the reaction time. You can be
Yes.
the captain and maybe not the best fragger on your team, but you still got to shoot. And
But
for
then
some
you still
people,
you still have examples like Forest, right? He is 30.
yep.
He's from June. He's almost 31 actually. His birthday's in like 2 weeks, or 3 weeks. So he's almost 31. He's still putting up numbers on the server. Like he really is. So
Yeah, there's
maybe
always
he's
going to
not the
be
best player in the world, but he's still really really good.
there's
right?
always going to be anomalies, but
So,
I do think CS the age is much more prevalent than Dota. Dota, I feel like you can go a lot longer. Plus, the other thing to consider that I don't think you really touched on is the fact that regardless of skill and all that comes with it, you still got to make connections, because people aren't just going to add random people to the roster. You have to.
Absolutely.
That's actually might be even, especially for people that have been playing. If you're playing that much Dota, you probably don't have great social skills. It's actually just amazing that some of these teams have gotten together with how little social skills are involved, right? Because like networking and connections, especially if you're on the complete outside right now, is super difficult, right? That's the one aspect that people don't really focus on very much, but it's real.
Yeah. But yeah, that's also true. And then finally, of course, one thing is like connections, but the first step to making connections is getting discovered, right? And that's the hard part. If you're, let's say you're someone who is just bluntly someone who is more individually skilled than you, it's still hard. It's very hard for these players to get discovered. There are players that are immortal top 200 or top 100 even, and they don't even get a chance because the teams need to be looking for that talent, and then you need to be the choice, and you need to be better as a choice than someone else. And there's very few people that just get the chance, honestly. So making a name for yourself nowadays as an unknown player, there's pretty much only one way to do it, or there are two ways, but one realistic one. The realistic one is climbing the ladder really high and showcasing very good individual skill, which is almost exclusively done by playing core. You can also do it with support, but it's really hard. Or playing and finding a way into a tier 3 or tier 2 team and slowly building your way up there with that team. But as we've talked about on previous podcasts, there's very little incentive to play tier 3 Dota. So it's hard to even make a name for yourself, because what tournaments do you play in that tier 1 teams will be looking at and be like, oh, this player could actually be interesting. One example of where it did happen was Nisha, right? Who now plays for Team Secret. He got discovered and taken away from the team that used to be Kingwin. And they were playing a lot of online tier 2 and tier 3 tournaments that there just aren't as many of right now, or they aren't as appealing to play. But obviously Nisha kind of made a name for himself by playing super well in that team and in their online qualifiers or whatever that they got access to. That team never made a major, but Nisha still got into Secret. So it is possible, but yeah, again, cost benefit does absolutely not favor you. Which I know, I mean, it's a shame, right? It's a dream of yours. It's something you would have loved to do, but you are one of very, very, very many that it just doesn't happen for, and that's just how it is.
All right, moving on to the next community question from Nico. Yeah. What are the differences between Denmark and the USA? This is more your question, since I've never been to Denmark.
Big question. Man, this is the kind of question that you can talk about for hours. Do you want to like narrow it down a little bit? Do you want to pick like
let's talk about food
or whatever? Okay, food, sure. Yep. What a surprise! You want to talk about food? Okay, so let's say food culture, okay? Because one of the things that always
can I say something before you start?
Yeah,
I don't know
sure.
if you're gonna mention every time I see you, which is not that. I was like, let's say once a year, let's say on average.
Yeah.
What is the one thing you always want so badly?
Appetizers?
Yes, but what do you call them? I can't remember anymore.
Oh, I used to call them entrees.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
we need to get an entree before we eat. Like, wait, what? What you want 2 entrees then? Is that what you're obsessed with appetizers? It's amazing.
The reason it's so intuitive for me to say entree is that in Danish, for example, when you walk into a house, right, the first room you enter is called entrée because that means, the entry room.
Mm-hmm.
So when you order an entree, in my head, that was always the first meal, right?
Yeah.
I don't know how it became the main course, but anyway, that's beside the point. Yeah, so I love appetizers. I love when I go to restaurants. It's one of my favorite things to do. I love going out to eat food. It's one of my favorite things to spend money on, and I love getting multiple courses. Always, it's always an experience for me. I love eating.
But getting multiple courses in the U.S. is quite different than in Europe or anywhere else, really.
That's one of the things we can talk about right now. So there are a couple of differences in food culture that are very clear. The first one I want to mention is when it comes to eating in the US, the waiting culture is very different.
Oh, yeah.
In Denmark, the waiter is, how to say, in a way, the waiter is the mediator between the kitchen and the guest, okay? They go, they take your order, they deliver the order to the kitchen, and they bring back the food to you. They are not there to have a conversation or to flirt with you or to ask how your day was or how it's going, or it's very to the point, I guess. They have a job, they're performing that job, and if they perform that job, you're happy. In the US, the waiter is more or less expected to pay more attention to your table, to be more conversational, more outgoing, more lively. And of course, it is in their own interest because they get tipped. And tipping culture is also very different in Denmark. In Denmark, when you go to restaurants, what it says it costs on the menu is what it costs. You pay the price for what it says on the menu, and that's it. In the US, you have to, in your head, you have to add, okay, I'm also tipping X%, and there's also state tax and all this stuff. So it's like, when I look at the menu in the US, I always need to tell myself what it says, you add 25%. Then you're pretty much there. Which is different. That's the first thing. That's the waiting culture where whatever you like more, right? I grew up with Danish style, so I feel like a lot of the time when I'm in the US,
I don't think anybody would prefer I've never met anybody that likes the tipping system in the US at all. It's horrible.
Oh, I didn't mean the system itself. I meant more the attitude of the waiters, like the type of waiting you get.
Okay, yeah, I can see that.
I think for some people that would be nice. Like they like having these conversations or whatnot.
It's usually
but if you come from Denmark and you go to the US, from my personal experience, a lot of the time it feels they feel too nice. Okay, it's weird to say it, but it feels fake because of that. Because they're nice because they have to be. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't seem genuine. And I just prefer, you have a job, you go and do your job, and that's great. Like you don't have to sugarcoat it or do anything extra for me. Anyway. So that's the first thing. The second thing is the food itself, right? America does bigger. It's not a meme that everything is bigger. And when I order food in the US, a lot of the time when I see the price of something, my imagination of what I'm getting and what I end up getting, I a lot of the time find myself, oh, okay, I ordered a lot of food, okay? Like you order an appetizer, you look at the price, and then you just get more for the dollar in the US.
So would you say if you're buying something, let's say you're just having one meal, let's say a hamburger, an equivalent restaurant in the US versus Denmark, obviously the portion is going to be bigger, but would they be the same price-ish? Like generally speaking, obviously it's a hard...
If we're just talking, like an average burger place or whatever, and you order a burger, they would probably cost about the same, but you would get 25% more in the US. That's my guess.
So when you're looking at the menu, you're like, especially like the first couple times perhaps, when you're not used to the system, or the portions, I should say, you're looking at a $10 burger and you're envisioning you're going to get about the same that you get in Denmark, but it's probably twice as much, right?
It's not twice as much, but it's more. It's clearly more. Like I would say 25 to 50% more. Yeah.
But the sides, the sides are way more, if I'm not mistaken, right? If there's like French fries, it's just like shit ton in the US.
Yeah, and the number one winner in the US in what is bigger is soda. It is insane how big sodas are. When I go to a place in the US and I picture myself ordering a medium soda, I have this picture in my mind, and I'm like, holy shit. Like I order a medium, and the thing I get is not even a large. Like it's bigger. It's bigger than a large.
Oh, it's
in
so
Denmark,
good.
if you order a medium soda, to give it, do you know, like, can you convert ounces to liters in your head? Like, somewhat?
Absolutely not.
Okay, do you know how big a pint is?
Wait, hold on. I have a thing here. I have my Dota.
Like, you have a pint glass. Do you have a pint glass?
I have ounces and milliliters on here, so you can give your comparison.
Okay, so how many ounces is half a liter? 500 milliliters to ounces. How much is that?
How many, what, say it again? How many ounces
500 milliliters in ounces.
It's about 18, let's say.
Okay. That is a medium in Denmark.
17.
That's a medium drink.
That's a medium, okay.
Yeah. In the US, that's a small. In my experience, that's
probably about right, yeah.
And when you order a medium drink in the US, I would say you get something upward of 25 or higher.
Right. It's interesting because
and
McDonald's...
that is absolutely large in
McDonald's
Denmark.
has changed it. Do you remember this this movie that came out? What's it called?
Super Size Me?
Super Size Me. When that came out, and McDonald's was very embarrassed about it and all that stuff, although it's no different than any other fast food restaurant. Since then, their mediums are actually mediums. And it's
what
really
do you mean
strange.
by actually? Do you mean their mediums are the mediums I said?
Yes, I think so. They're very small. I'm actually mad when I get a large drink there because I'm like, I could have gone somewhere else and gotten literally twice as much and given myself a heart attack. That's what I want.
Exactly.
That's what everybody wants. Diabetes and heart attacks.
Honestly, for me, props to McDonald's for that. I really think sodas are too big in the US.
Here's the other thing. Not only are they bigger, especially when you're at a restaurant or let's say you're eating in like a fast food place, always free refills.
Yeah.
And so that's the one thing I was going to mention about the waiters. Yeah, they're fake. It's annoying that they keep coming in and asking you questions that you usually don't care. You don't want to hear about it. But if you want a refill on your drink, they're on it, man. They're on it real fast.
Yeah, I know. That is something I think I have made use of very little. Generally, when I order a drink in the US, I drink it and then I've had enough. Like I got what I wanted. Also, if you get free refills, what's the point in ordering a bigger drink?
Well, that's different.
Why don't you just order a small one and refill it?
If you're in a restaurant, there's no sizes. You just get whatever the size, the normal size. If you're going to fast food and you're leaving, then you want the larger one. Okay. Or but if you're a fat piece of shit like me and you're eating in, you get the large, you drink it while you're there, and then you go and refill for later and you take it with you.
Gotcha.
That's how you get one of these bad boy bellies. So I'm a Coke addict. Coca-Cola bellies.
I mean, I drink sodas very little nowadays, actually. I almost exclusively drink water. And it's something I would say is like, again, I'm not going to tell you how to live your life, but I really think soda is a killer.
No, actually. I agree. And I'll say this right now. I'm on a diet.
Honestly, it's relatively, how to say, if you're looking to lose weight or at least not gain weight, it's probably one of the things that it might seem hard to cut out at first because you're addicted to the sugar. But the payoff is that you actually get to eat normally and nice sized meals and not feel like you need to cut a lot on food. Because
everything you're saying is true.
You get to enjoy the food.
So here's the thing, syndereN. Everything you said is true. I've gone like months without drinking soda. All right. I've done this several times actually. I know this is stupid. Out of everything that I've ever consumed, food, drink, Coke is literally number one. It is my favorite thing to consume. It tastes amazing to me. So it's really hard for me to go like super long stretches.
So you would rather cut on food and then keep your Coke, basically.
I mean, theoretically, I'd like to lose my weight, and then I would love to be able to drink like a can of soda a day or something. Like I feel like even though it's still bad, it's not like excessive. You know,
a can of soda is not that absurd either. Like the thing you hear about a lot of Americans drink a liter of soda a day.
That's absurd. Yes. I've done that many times.
Literally, when you go to a fast food place and you order a large drink, that's what you get. You get a liter of soda. I mean, it's watered down a little bit, right? But you get the point. Like,
you get it with no ice. Trust me. You don't.
Oh yeah.
Make sure no ice.
Jesus Christ. Yeah. Okay.
All right. Anyway, so let's wrap that up.
Okay. Well, that was probably Nico. I hope you're happy with that. Maybe you didn't want to hear about food at all, and you wanted to hear about politics, or you can
reuse this question another time. Why not?
We could make this a segment, kind of, and talk. Not necessarily something we do every episode, but we talk about just differences between Denmark and USA. And this was the first one where we talked about food. Okay. I'm actually down for this.
Yeah, I like it.
The problem is it's largely going to be a monologue for me because I'm the one who has the most experience with both places, right?
It's interesting.
You still chipped in a decent amount, so yeah, I could see it.
This one was a lot of soda though, so that I can talk about soda all day. Anyway.
Oh yeah.
Last segment. Well, first and foremost, for We Rate Things, we're not doing one this week because we want you guys to submit your suggestions on topics for We Rate Things.
Yes.
More like personal in nature, right? Like, what are some examples? Maybe like your stubbornness level. That would be pretty good.
Yeah.
Right.
So in case you missed if you're new to the show or you missed it the last times or whatever, basically what we did was we had a segment in the end of the last 2 episodes called We Rate Things, where we rate some sort of concept. We rate ourselves, and then we need to guess what the other person rate themselves.
Right.
On that scale. And the 2 we did so far were, what was it? It was how many times we wash our hands, and the one before was how big our ego is, according to ourselves and according to the other person.
We could do something else, how big our penises are.
We would love to get suggestions from you guys if you come up with something fun. And of course, bonus points if it's something that's just fun, right? If it's not fun, it's still fine, if it's something that's interesting.
Are fun.
But if it's fun, yeah, well, great. But yeah,
now the question is, will it be in the metric system or will it be in the imperial system? That's the real question. Okay, so final segment of the day. I'm going to do this occasionally, and you can chip in. You probably have more of these than me. It's a Today I Learned segment, okay?
Oh.
Obviously, it doesn't have to be the day of to put this in. Doesn't make sense. I learned this about 6 months ago, I want to say, and it blew my mind, syndereN. Okay.
All right.
And I have not written it down on your little sheet, so you can't cheat. Have you ever heard of something called, don't look this up, have you ever heard of something called Photic sneeze reflex? Please say no.
It's the thing where people look into the light and it makes them sneeze, right?
God, I hate you. Okay.
Yeah, I've heard about this. I've known about it for a long time.
How is that possible? You know the scientific term for that.
I'm not 100% sure, but shit, is it? Either my girlfriend used to try to do it and it didn't work, or it does work for her. I'm actually not 100% sure.
Okay.
So but I do know it works for a lot of people.
Interesting.
I don't think it works for me.
So for people that are unaware of what we're talking about, since we haven't actually explained it, let me read off the definition, okay? 17 to 35% of the population is estimated to be prone to the photic sneeze reflex, also known as achoo, the autosomal dominant compulsive helio-ophthalmic outburst of sneezing syndrome.
That's what happens when you really try to make.
Yes.
When you really try to make
an acronym work.
That's what you get. Yes.
This is reflexive sneezing set off by light, especially light from the sun. So let me talk about my experience first, and then you can talk about...
Man, I really want to sneeze. Let me look straight into the sun.
Okay, so as of 6 months ago, I've been doing this my whole life. When I'm like feeling a sneeze come on, if I'm outside, I will sneeze literally every day once I walk outside. It happens every time. If I'm indoors, I just look towards a light and I sneeze most of the time. It really helps me sneeze.
But you didn't know that your whole life until now.
No. Well, 6 months ago, I didn't know that was not the, I thought everybody did that. I didn't know this was even a thing.
Oh, I see.
Apparently, I'm in the minority, and that blew my mind that most people do not have this. It's so weird to me.
I see. Okay.
So you don't
just
have
took
this.
It for granted. That's funny.
Yes.
It's the other way around for me. I had no idea it existed because I don't have it, right? Until I was told. I didn't know that was a thing.
Okay.
I just sneeze when there's pollen. That's my trigger. If I'm like, I need to sneeze, then I just go outside in a field, and then I
just look at a picture
and then
of you,
feel sick instead,
and I sneeze every time. So let us know in the comments.
I'm so bright.
If you guys have achoo, also known as the photic sneeze reflex, PSR. Speaking of which, maybe I should do this for another segment, ASMR segment, where we ask.
That should probably be its own podcast.
Yeah, I think so.
That's just you doing ASMR.
ASMR. Okay. Anyway, that is the end of the episode. Thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks for listening. Any final words for everybody out there, syndereN?
See you next week.
Same time, same place. Your bedroom. Wink, wink.